Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Normally when we think about addictions, we're often thinking about the substance itself. We're thinking about drinking the alcohol from that bottle. We're thinking about lighting up that cigarette or that marijuana spliff and smoking it. We're thinking about consuming the substance and the feeling, the nice feeling that we're going to get after consuming that substance. But one thing that we might not be thinking about when it comes to addictions is the cost of addictions. And I'm not just talking about the amount of money that we have to spend to get the substance. Addictions cost us in multiple different ways. And in this video, I'm going to be breaking down the real cost of addictions using some of my own experiences as well as a research backed perspective. The cost of addiction is something that is very real and consequential, and something that's important to understand. So, with all that being said, let's get into it. So, the first cost of addictions that I'm going to talk about is the financial cost. Now, this one might seem a little bit obvious, right? Of course, we have to pay money in order to get the substance that we want. We have to pay for that bottle. We have to pay for that pack of cigarettes or whatever substance it is. But hear me out. Addictions are expensive. It might not seem like you're spending a lot of money when you're making a one-time purchase, but over time, these expenses do add up, and they can be quite significant. Using myself as an example, during my heaviest years of drinking, during about my 10 heaviest years of drinking, I was spending about $40 a week on alcohol. Now, again, that might not sound like a lot of money to a lot of people, but when you add that up over the course of a year, you're looking at $2,080 on alcohol alone over the course of a year. And when I added that up over the course of that 10-year period, that's $20,800 that I spent on my alcohol addiction. And keep in mind that that number does not account for the times where I went to bars and spent money on alcohol. When I went, to events and to functions and things like that, or when I drank at restaurants, it doesn't account for that. It only accounts for my personal consumption of alcohol, $20,800 in that 10-year period, and that's a conservative estimate. It could be more than that. Now, $20,800 is already high enough, but that number gets even higher when I factor in my marijuana addiction. I smoked marijuana pretty much every single day for about a 3-year period. And during that time, I spent $80 a week on my marijuana addiction. When I added that number up over the course of a year, that came up to $4,160 just spent on marijuana alone in the course of 1 year. When I added those numbers up over the course of the entire 3-year period, that's approximately $12,500 that I spent on marijuana over the course of that 3-year period. About $12,500. And again, just like with the numbers I gave for my alcohol addiction, that figure does not account for the money that I spent smoking marijuana when I was out at an event, when I was out with friends, when I was out doing things. That only accounts for my personal consumption. Now, when we combine the number from my heaviest drinking years with the amount that I spent on marijuana during those 3 years, when we combine these two figures, we get a number of approximately $33,000, right? $33,000 that I spent on those addictions. Now that obviously that's a lot of money in and of itself. With $33,000, I could have used that towards the down payment for a home. I could have invested that in the stock market. There are a lot of things that someone could do with $33,000, but you know, I spent all of that on my own indulgences, just on substance use. That's what I spent it on. So the bottom line here is that the regular use of alcohol, cigarettes, marijuana, or any other substance adds up over time, even if we're not aware of it or if we're not keeping track of it. In terms of the money that we spend on our addictions, addictions can cost us a lot and it can really drain our finances. Now, you may have heard the numbers that I cited, and you may think that you spent a lot more than that on your substance addiction, or perhaps you spent less. But this would be a good time for us to reflect upon really how much we've spent on our addictions, and we could be taking that money and directing it towards something else, something productive, something that's going to benefit us moving forward in the future, or we could be saving that money. So it's just something to think about and reflect upon when we think about how much money we've spent on substances in the past. So money and finances might seem like the most obvious costs of addictions. But now let's talk about some of the costs that are a little less obvious. We're going to talk about the physical costs of addictions, the cost of addictions on our physical health. So again, using myself as an example, I was usually always drinking or smoking, but I rarely ever felt good. I was using substances because they helped me to feel good. But normally, after a night of drinking, I did not feel good. I would wake up in the morning and I would feel terrible. I would have hangovers. I would have headaches. I'd feel low energy, weakness. I would feel kind of a little bit dizzy, disoriented. And I mean, sometimes the hangovers were so bad. If I really overdid it on a night of drinking, sometimes the hangovers were so bad that they would persist for more than a day. I would have hangovers that would last 2 days, sometimes almost 3 days, in the most severe cases. For my marijuana addiction, I felt a lot of the same symptoms. I would feel weak. I would have low energy. I would feel lethargic. I would feel disoriented. And during the height of my addictions, getting intoxicated or getting high and getting drunk, that was the most important thing to me. I would still be responsible and I would go to work and I would pay my bills and things like that. But once I was finished with that, I just wanted to be left alone to my addictions. So, being wrapped up in that and being completely preoccupied with that, I began to neglect my own physical health. Right, I wouldn't eat well. I was mainly subsisting on snacks, on junk food, on high sugar drinks. I was barely drinking any water, and so that also compounded what I was feeling, the physical symptoms that I was feeling. It was making me feel weaker. It was making me feel more tired, because not only was I, abusing the substances that I was using, but I also was not eating well and not taking care of myself. Research shows that some of the most common effects on us physically for long-term alcohol use are liver disease, fatty liver, cirrhosis, pains in the liver. There are effects on the heart, such as weakened heart muscle, irregular heartbeat, and increased risks of heart attack. Long-term alcohol use also has an effect on the brain. We have cognitive decline and an increased risk of dementia and Alzheimer's. There's also a cancer risk with throat cancer, esophagus cancer, colon cancer, and others, as well as breast cancer featuring most prominent for women. who have a long-term history of heavy alcohol use. Your immune system may also weaken, leaving you vulnerable and susceptible to illnesses. Research into the long-term heavy use of marijuana also shows cognitive decline, respiratory effects such as chronic bronchitis and airway inflammation. There is also an increased risk of depression and psychosis. Marijuana can trigger something known as cannabis-induced psychosis in people who have a predisposition to mental health disorders. The bottom line is that substances can definitely cost us in terms of our physical health. The more we use substances, especially over a long period of time, is the more that our physical health might suffer and deteriorate. So we've talked about the financial cost of addictions, and we've talked about the physical cost of addictions. So now let's talk about the social cost of addictions. Addictions don't just affect the addict. They don't just affect the person who's using. Addictions can also affect the people around the addict. They can affect that individual's family members, and it can affect that person's friends as well. Oftentimes, when we are in active addiction, we act in certain ways. You know, we behave and we act out in certain ways, and we may not be aware of it. And sometimes the things that we say or do, they can push our friends and family away from us. I know that in my own experience, addictions have led me to poor conflict resolution. I know that there were instances where I would have a disagreement with a loved one, and because I was intoxicated and because I was under the influence, I said things that I really should not have said, and I said things that I didn't mean. I was not at all in control of my emotions. I was not able to regulate my behavior or my emotions, and I had very low impulse control. And so I acted out in ways that were simply unacceptable, and I said things that I really should not have said. And as a result of that, I had fallouts with these individuals. We fell out with each other. And a lot of that was because of the way that I behaved when I was in active addiction. My addictions really caused me to damage relationships with friends, with loved ones, with people I really cared about, and caused me to have a fallout with these people. And the way that these fallouts happened, it wasn't really, so dramatic. It wasn't as though, I said what I said, and then, overnight, I just didn't ever see this person again. It was more gradual, right? After the event took place, you would hear less from this person. They wouldn't call you as much. They wouldn't text you as much. They wouldn't want to invite you to hang out as much. And over time, it began to occur to me that, my behavior, the way that I spoke to this person, that could be what's causing this to happen. That's why they don't want to interact with me anymore. It's also important to keep in mind that addictions can isolate people. That's another social cost or consequence of addictions. When we really get deep into our addictions, sometimes we just want to be left to our addictions, right? We don't want anyone bothering us. We don't want anyone telling us we shouldn't be doing that. We don't want anyone to come in between us and our addictions. We don't want that. I didn't want that, right? At a point, that became the thing that I cared about most, and I isolated myself. And didn't really care very much if I hung out with friends or family. I just wanted to be left to my addiction. So that's something that can happen to addicts. They can allow their addictions to get so out of control that they end up isolating themselves. And while isolating, they end up using more, right? So it becomes a vicious cycle. of addictions, which leads to isolation, which leads to heavier addictions and heavier substance use. So it's important to keep in mind, guys, that addictions really can damage your relationships with the people around you. They can damage your relationships with your family members. They can damage your relationships with your friends. So it's really something to think about carefully when you're in addictions. Is it worth it? Do we really want to see those relationships damaged? Do we really want to fall out with people who are important to us? And do we really want these relationships to deteriorate? We really need to be aware of the social and relationship cost of addictions, which is a very real and consequential cost. So the final cost of addiction that I'm going to talk about is the mental psychological cost of addiction. There are a number of well documented mental health and psychological costs and effects of heavy substance use and long-term substance use. Depression is a well documented side effect of long-term and heavy substance use. Cognitive fog is another mental or psychological cost. And this was something that I experienced myself where a lot of the time I just wouldn't be able to think properly. It would almost be like there's a haze or a cloud in your mind, and you can't really think through situations carefully or analyze information that's being given to you. It kind of slowed down my thinking processes, my cognitive processes. A lot of people do experience this cognitive fog or mental fog. One of the other mental and psychological costs of addiction is irritability. A lot of the time when we don't have our substance, when we're not using it, when we're not high on that substance, we might find ourselves irritable. And sometimes we might think that that's our personality, right? We begin to think, this is how I am as a person. I'm an irritable person. But really it's likely because, your brain has been recalibrated to want this substance, to need this substance to restore some level of balance, to restore the baseline. And so, we may feel irritable when we don't have our substance. But a lot of the times we think that it's because that's our personality, when really what we could be experiencing are some mild symptoms of withdrawal from the substance. What can also happen in addiction is that over time we develop tolerance to our substance of choice. And as a consequence of that, regular things in life, everyday things in life that used to bring us joy no longer bring us joy. And this is well known and it's documented, and it's called anhedonia. So anhedonia is when, again, regular things in life no longer bring you joy. So whereas you used to derive joy and pleasure from working out in the gym, you don't really feel all that great after working out in the gym. Maybe you used to feel really great after eating, your favorite meal at your favorite restaurant, but that no longer brings you joy either. You no longer derive joy from spending time with your friends or with your family. So this inability to feel joy from everyday things that used to bring us joy. This is very real, and this is one of those mental and psychological costs that can happen to us when we are in addiction. The bottom line is that many people don't connect these mental and psychological symptoms to the substance. They may just think that, they're a naturally moody person. They're a naturally irritable person. They're just naturally depressed, or, they can't feel good after doing things that used to make them feel good. But a lot of the times we are experiencing the mental and psychological costs of substance addiction. Understanding these mental and psychological cost of addictions are very important, so that if we find ourselves in a situation where we are experiencing these things as a result of our substance use, or we see someone else going through that as an experience of our substance use, we have a better understanding of why this is occurring, why this is going on, and we can begin to strategize and take action to counteract and prevent this. So we've seen how addictions cost us in multiple different ways. Addictions cost us financially. It drains our financial resources. Addictions cost us physically. It causes our physical health to deteriorate. Addictions cost us in terms of our relationships and friendships, right? It can damage our relationships with loved ones. And addictions cost us in terms of our psychological and mental health. It can cost us to suffer mentally and psychologically. But I'd like to know what you guys think. What did you think about this breakdown of the costs of addictions? Have you experienced any of these costs, or is there something else that you would like to share? Please feel free to leave a comment in the comment section below. If you got value out of this video, please feel free to give it a like. Subscribe if you would like to see more content on addictions, recovery, sober living, and mental health. And if you'd like to know more about what I do professionally, or if you're interested in working with a sober life coach, you can feel free to check out my website at www.kickthehabitcoaching.com. I really appreciate you guys tuning in to this video, and I hope to see you on the next one. Take care.